going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare, live here on Game Plus Network and FTN Network. Not going to lie, I did have to just take a double check in the top right of the screen to make sure it is indeed Wednesday, and we are off here. Just finished up recording with Jake Seeley, All in Football, coming your way on Game Plus Network as well. You can listen on iTunes and Spotify and also watch here on our FTN Network YouTube page. We went through some of the deep rookies, any value to be had at the wide receiver position, the quarterback position, the running back position. And when I mentioned deep rookies, like anybody outside of the top 3 rounds, those are the rookies that we talked about. Today on the show, we are going to start the process of fantasy football rankings. Now, again, it is only May 10th, but we have talked a lot of Underdog Fantasy on this show over the past week or so. We have our Underdog Fantasy Football Draft Guide, which is live over at ftnfantasy.com. We have all kinds of goodness inside the guide, rankings, projections, rankings from everybody, projections, strategy for the contest, stacks to attack, values, everything that you can think of to prepare you for your drafts over at underdogfantasy.com. Promo code FTN. They'll match your first deposit up to $100, 100% first deposit match. It doesn't have to be $100. It could be 50, 25, whatever you want to do. You can take part in some drafts over there. We're going to do some drafts here on this show. Probably one a week, to be honest with you. It's fun. Love drafting. Don't have to worry about the waiver wire process. It's best ball, draft, and forget it, and watch the points pile up. The NFL schedule will be released tomorrow. We can talk about strength of schedule, but we will have that inside the guide as well. Plenty more content to come as we get closer and closer to week 1 of the NFL season. I saw before I got on some of the schedule was leaked, like the London games. I see the Eagles are playing the Giants in Philadelphia on Christmas Day. May have to go. I've been to Philly come Christmas time. I was hanging out during the Santa Claus parade. It's a good time. It's a good time. It's always a good time in Philly, right? For me, anyways, but I'm slightly biased. But it's all there for you. Today, we're going to take a look at the top 12 quarterbacks in Underdog Fantasy Best Ball from an ADP standpoint. And then I'm going to share my top 12 fantasy football quarterbacks for the season. Very similar in terms of best ball. My rankings over at ftnfantasy.com, my redraft rankings are very similar to my best ball rankings. I think there's a few players at every position, a couple that I think have a higher ceiling, maybe a little bit more riskier in redraft, but a higher ceiling in terms of best ball because you are shooting for the best possible outcome. That's why we talk about stacks and how beneficial it is to stack in your drafts. Your quarterback tosses 3 touchdowns. Joe Burrow, you have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and maybe you don't get T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd. Maybe you got Irv Smith. Maybe Irv Smith's season in Cincinnati. You have a Bengals stack. Joe Burrow tosses 3 or 4 touchdowns, 2 to Jamar Chase, 1 to Boyd, 1 to Irv Smith. You're having yourself a pretty good week, right? You're maximizing your upside. And I think there are certainly some risky players like a DeAndre Swift. I won't have ranked aggressively in my redraft rankings. I think I have him outside the top 24 at the running back position. But in best ball, I'm kind of thinking about him as a top 20 running back. We've seen him before when he's healthy. It's a big if. He's yet to have a full season in his NFL career. But a couple years ago, 2 years ago, in the last 8 weeks of the season, he was a top 5 running back. His fantasy points per game were right there with Austin Eckler and the alphas of the world at the running back position. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He ran behind a really good offensive line in Detroit. Same sort of thing applies in Philadelphia. A better offensive line, a better run game, a better offense. I don't know if he's ever going to have games with 20 plus touches, and I would bank on that not happening. You go and look at the course of his career. He doesn't have a lot of games with over 15 plus carries. He's not a guy that's really built that way. And there's a lot going on in Philadelphia. All of that kind of ties into the ADP, high risk, high reward. But that's just an example of why you would see over at ftnfantasy.com when you're looking at my rankings, maybe redraft or other people that we have ranking over at ftnfantasy.com, why the difference between a redraft and a best ball. You could, like Will Fuller. I'll be honest, I was never drafting Will Fuller in redraft leagues. Just wasn't doing it. Where's Will Fuller, by the way? I hope he's all right. I hope he's good. What the last time we saw him was in Miami. We didn't really see him. Imagine him in Miami with the explosiveness going on there. But he's a guy that I would have a hard time drafting and redraft. I was kind of the same way with Arian Foster. I am that guy. I do kind of cross guys off my list that have, injury issues, especially if they're going early. But in best ball, you can make a case for a lot of guys. You do want to be aggressive with players that you like and shooting for upside in those stacks. But the guide is live over at ftnfantasy.com, as you saw there. And we do have a lot of goodness in the draft guide. And when you have the full FTN fantasy football package, you're also going to get the rankings, the best ball guide, all of the articles that are just not best ball related, offensive line rankings, defensive line rankings, you know, old faces in new places. Like, you just, everything got you covered. I don't know how our guy Daniel Kelly does it, but this guy is editing multiple articles every day, and we're only into May. So our goal is to have you guys covered, to be prepared for your fantasy football drafts unlike any other year. And you also get the rookie scouting guide, which is volume number 2 now via Jeff Ratcliffe, our very own 150 player profiles. Got the draft board, super flex rankings, single quarterback rankings, stats, overall rankings, player comparisons, draft board there for you as well. And Jeff is going to have volume 3, but I like that he kept his initial write up for every player, and then he just updated it with the team that they went to and how it changes their outlook for the first season in the NFL for a future standpoint. Jeff does a fantastic job with this rookie scouting guide every single year. This would be year 3 here at FTN. Our 3-year birthday, I do believe, is the first week in July, I think. So we're creeping up on that mark. And Ratcliffe always has you covered. Brazis 91 in the house. Good afternoon, Meaney. Hope you got some rest, brother. I haven't slept since finding out my Hawks are getting Bedard. Woo, let's go. Let's go. I would imagine, and speaking of Connor Bedard, we could just do this right now. I did want to get into the hockey, but do you have the tweet that we saw yesterday? I forget who it was from. Here we go, from Ben Pope. The Blackhawks, this was 2.5 hours. 1.5, the tweet says, but I saw some other, tweets from some people that roughly 2.5 hours flirt with $300 million season ticket worth of season tickets. And you see here from Ben Pope, the Blackhawks have already sold 2.5 million worth of season ticket plans for next year. That was an hour and a half after winning the number 1 pick in the NHL draft lottery, including more than 500 new full season plans. I don't even know what the latest numbers are, but this is exactly what I talked about yesterday when I rolled through the NHL mock draft. Do we still have that handy? Here it is. I'll chuck it up. Thank you. Sorry, Quantum. My bad there. NHL mock draft. This is what I went with here, Brazis. 91, Daily Handle in the house. Good afternoon, Means and everybody. This is what I went for. Of course, they're going to take Connor Bedard, and Adam Fantilli is minus 400 to be the second overall pick to the Ducks, but that's exactly it. Crazy how one player can change so much with a franchise. And it's an original 6 market. It's a team that's won 3 Stanley Cups over the last 20 years. The last time they picked first overall, they took Patrick Kane. That worked out very, very well for them. They traded a lot of their pieces over the past couple of years, and good players that I thought they should have kept around, like Kirby Dach and Dylan Strome, but they really went all in for a chance to get Connor Bedard, and they got Connor Bedard. So I don't want to compare him to Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby. And I want to temper expectations in the first year from a fantasy standpoint and just from an overall standpoint. But expectations are extremely high when you score 70-plus goals and 140 points in like 70-odd games in the WHL. You set records as a World Junior, player in the World Juniors last year in Halifax. I mean, over 20 points and, just a handful of games as Canada won gold. And, he got it done on the big stage. And you're right. It's a hockey market. It's original 6 squad. And last year, the year before, has been pretty bad for Chicago, and I'm sure some fans are pretty embarrassed. Some probably are with everything that's gone on for the Blackhawks. So this is a good get for them. There's no question. He's going to be a really good player in the league, but I do want to temper expectations, in the first year. He's only 17 years old. He's just a child. He's just a kid, but the work ethic is certainly there for him. He does remind me of Crosby. I feel like he's going to have those Crosby tree trunk legs. He's going to be a tough guy to, knock off the puck off of him in the corner and stuff. And that's what we saw from Crosby. He was super young. He came to the league as a young player. He's like kind of small for, his age when he came in, but he was just tough to knock off in the corners. And you could see it right off the get-go firsthand, Sid the Kid. So good stuff for the Chicago Blackhawks. And you saw the mock there. I got Adam Fantilli. I think it's a good consolation prize as the Blackhawks moved up from 3-1. And then the Ducks had 25% odds to get him. Didn't get him, but I think it's a really good consolation prize there to get Adam Fantilli. Adam Rankamp in the house as well. First time watching live in a while. You guys are always hanging out with me during Dangle Bet Sully. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to take a quick break today on this show. We are going to go through the top 12 in terms of ADP, Underdog Fantasy quarterbacks. I got my top 12 rankings as well. There's one player in particular I want to give some love to. Here in the next block, we are going to talk NHL. We're going to go over the 2 games this evening on the ice. The Oilers looking to tie things up at 2 games apiece. The Leafs have their backs up against it, down 3-0 in Sunrise against the Panthers. We got some NBA playoffs to talk about. A lot of afternoon action around the diamond, but I got a couple props that we're going to revisit. We're going to visit, I should say, not revisit. We're going to visit a couple MLB props for some later games to take care of the Game Plus Network crew, because you're watching Game Plus Network live. A lot of afternoon action already over with and live here across the diamond. So we're going to take a look at the late slate. A lot to get to as per usual. Hang tight. We'll be back in a couple.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking dynasty to the next level.
Welcome back in. We're going to talk a little hockey. Adam Rankamp's given us a couple early plays around the diamond, and I do like this one. The Tampa Bay Rays team total over 2.5 in the first 5 innings. Yes, Dean, as you corrected yourself there, Dean Kremer on the bump for the O's, and Tampa leading the Bigs in WRC plus against righties. I mean, they lead the Bigs in a lot of categories, including a 29-8 record. What the heck is going on in Tampa? I know they beat up on some brutal teams to start the season, but these guys are. Wander Franco is becoming one of my favorite players in the Bigs. He went yard again last night. He's just he's unbelievable to watch. He's so fun to watch, and he's got some swag to him. I love when he picked up the ball there, at short, and he's just like a little bit of a flick, and he tossed it over. That was the second. He tossed it over across the diamond. Actually, it was short. I know my bases. I know my positions, I think. He just, you guys all saw it, right? I mean, he picked it up. There's a little bit of a cockiness to him. I like the swag, though. He just like a little bit of a toss and then gunned it over to first base. What a player. What a stud. The Rays got quite the ball team over there. And it's just too bad, my guy, Jeffrey Springs, right? Jeffrey Springs with the Tommy John surgery. But yeah, yesterday, baseball's okay for us. We didn't get Shohei. It was Shohei Day. He was stuck on 7. He had a really rough 5th inning, I do believe, where I think he gave up like 6 or 7. I think it was a hit and then a 2-run shot and then a couple more hits. So he did have a rough 1 inning, but he was still like on point. He was still kind of bringing it. He kept checking his finger looked like he had like some sort of blister, but he did power through. But we did talk about the Cubs over 3.5 runs, and we actually found a better number later on in the day that we gave on this show. That's why the prop shop really is your friend. It's a free tool. Save you a lot of time and a lot of cash. But the Cubbies, we also had for a first run inning at plus 235 against Jack Flaherty, who continues to struggle. I know the Cardinals won yesterday, but Flaherty gave up another bomb. I think that's 6 straight games he's allowed a home run. He's really struggled with his command as well, and he's been rocked early and often. So something to consider moving forward when Jack Flaherty is on the bump. And we did get Lucas Giolito over 5.5 strikeouts at plus money. I think he racked up like 8 or 9 last night as the White Sox, I believe they took care of the Royals. So we'll revisit some baseball stuff here in just a little bit. I do want to talk some hockey with you guys. We'll recap last night. I like to roll through some of the 5-5 numbers with you guys and blowouts again in the NHL. What is up with the second round? It's just blowout after blowout after blowout. Let's start here with the Hurricanes and the Devils last night. 4 games, we've seen a goalie get pulled in all 4 games, 3 times from the Devils. They went with Vitek Vanacek last night, who I thought it was a mistake, but I understand Lindy Ruff, trying to mix it up. He put all the buttons that he pushed on for game 3, everything worked out for him in terms of just line movement up and down. The lineup, guys, Palat up to the top line and Mercer on the second line with Timo Meier, who scored again last night, and Jack Hughes actually was deflected to Jack Hughes there. But nonetheless, the Devils just look toast. They can't get a save. They can't get a save. They pulled their goalie in games 1, 2, and 3. We've seen the Hurricanes pull their goalie at one point, Frederik Andersen, in the last game. So a big, massive win here for the Carolina Hurricanes. And from a 5-5 standpoint, it really was all about Carolina last night, even into the third period when most teams kind of just go relax mode into a shell, already up all those goals. The second period was just extremely explosive from them. They scored 5 goals, and I think they scored 4 goals in a 5-minute span. We did give a little bit of love to Jordan Martinook. We had a parlay here on the show yesterday with Joe Pavelski and Jordan Martinook over 1.5 shots, I think at like plus 170-ish over at DraftKings. He's had a hell of a series. He's had 2 points in every single game here in the series. Yesterday, he had 5-5. He had a goal and 3 points. He finished with 5 shot attempts, which led all forwards, and he had 3 shots, which of course led all forwards. Tied there with Jordan Stahl, who had 2 assists last night. And at all strengths, I mean, it's the same thing every time I look at these numbers from a Devil standpoint. It's the defensemen that are leading the way. Brent Pesce, Jalen Chatfield, Brent Burns, all these guys with 6 attempts at all strengths. Brent Burns is the guy that's leading the way in terms of ice time, 24 minutes played. It's 4 minutes than the next closest guy on the Carolina Hurricanes. And the shots, I mean, Seth Jarvis has 3, Stefan Noesen has 3, but it's spread out across the board. A lot of players here with 2. A good game from Martin Necas last night, who had 2 shots, or 3 shots rather, 4 attempts and 2 goals. That's at all strengths. On the Devils side of things, it was just very disappointing. I mean, I thought they were sloppy. And I didn't think that their big boys showed up like they showed up in game 3. We did get Nico Hischier. He had 3 attempts and 3 shots at 5-5. Jack Hughes just had the 3 attempts and 2 shots. They got away from, the matchups change, of course, when you go home, away, and on the road. And in games 1 and 2, Jordan Stahl was matched up against Jack Hughes, and he just had his number. And there were moments certainly in game 3 where Lindy Ruff got away from that matchup, was able to, but for the most part, Jordan Stahl was on the ice and, shut down that Hughes line. And I think it was a very frustrating performance, but needed to see something a little bit more here from the Devils at 5-5. Brendan Smith and Dougie Hamilton can't be 1 and 2 in terms of shot attempts for you. So something from the big boys, but looks like they're done. I would say they're done. Maybe they win 1 game in Carolina, but the Hurricanes have been just so deadly at home in the playoffs this season and in years past as well. And they just continue to prove me wrong. They really do. I mean, they're getting contributions up and down their lineup from, there's no Svechnikov, there's no Pacioretty, there's no Teuvo Teravainen. Sebastian Aho has been really quiet in this series. It's been Martinook. It's been the Martinook, Kotkaniemi, and Jesper Fast line. Like, those guys have been good. Jordan Stahl chips in. Martin Necas has himself a good game. The defense is solid. Frederik Andersen bounced back yesterday. Speaking of bouncing back, how about the Dallas Stars? This is what I expected to see from them last night. A big W against the Kraken. They win 6-3. They exploded as well into the second period. I just knew right away. The first shift, we had Joe Pavelski back up on that top line with Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz. Hintz scores a goal. Pavelski scores a goal. I thought that was Robinson's best game of the series. He didn't score a goal. My goodness, he had some chances. but he popped off. I mean, he had 3 attempts and 2 shots at 5-5. But at all strengths, this is a guy that checked some boxes for me last night. He had 6 attempts, which was the most among forwards, tied with Joe Pavelski, who had 6 attempts as well. Ryan Suter had the 8 attempts, which led the way for the Stars at all strength. But I thought that top line was really good. But one thing I liked about the Dallas Stars, and I really liked this team last season. I just thought that they were a one-line team. They were really, really top-heavy. And, heading into the playoffs, they almost beat the Flames, thanks to Jake Ottinger. But they just didn't have any other balance, like up and down their lineup. And then at the deadline, I thought they did 2 terrific things. They got Evgeny Donanov, who we had last night for a point here on the show and picked up 2 points, had an assist. We talked about the value for the assist, a +235 for Donanov for the Apple. On that second line, really shored up that second line, mixed in with the bounce back performance from Jamie Benn this season. The breakout campaign from Wyatt Johnson. Second line's been good all year long, really good on home ice. Had some moments. Jamie Benn had a terrific goal last night. And then line 3. So with Joe Pavelski coming back into the lineup to start this series, they put him on that third line with Marchment and Max Domi. And then when it wasn't working, we talked on the show how they could move that, and they did move it up. They moved Pavelski up on that top line. It's been one of the best lines in the NHL since the start of last season. They were feeling it last night. And then it gives you, it's a luxury because the additions of Domi and Donanov give you 3 lines that can score. And that's exactly what we saw last night from Max Domi. A heck of a game from him. I thought Tyler Seguin had a little bit of a giddy up in his skates, and he was great on that third line. And we saw those guys have a really good game, I thought, especially at 5-5. But Max Domi has a goal and an assist. He finishes with 3 shot attempts. Tyler Seguin had 3 shots on 3 attempts as well. So all 3 lines were rolling last night for the Stars. And Jake Ottinger had a nice bounce back performance. The Kraken were doing some things late in the game to kind of make it a little close. Like they scored a couple goals. They scored a goal early in the third period. They got a power play. They ended up scoring a goal as well. So they cut the lead, I believe, to 2, and then Domi gets the empty netter. But that's the Stars that we like. That's why we have this team making a run. That's why we jumped on them at 18-1 to win the Stanley Cup at the NHL trade deadline when those moves were made. I really like this team. Kraken are fun. It's a really nice story. Grubauer had some really nice moments again last night. Made a hell of a save. Empty net there from Sagan off the faceoff. He reached across and made a toe save. He's been phenomenal for the Kraken. But now they go back home in their own barn. I really like Dallas, and I still like them in 6. That was my pick. I still feel this team in 6. As for tonight, actually, I'll quickly on the Seattle side of things, a couple things that I did get wrong that I always want to hold myself accountable on this show and try to feel like if the process was right and if it was wrong. So Jared McCann returned to the lineup last night, and he didn't play a lot at 5-5. In fact, this is not Jared McCann, what he usually plays. He played 946 at 5-5. The only guy that played fewer minutes at 5-5, Brendan Tanev. This is a guy that scored 40 goals, was on the top line for the Kraken, just kind of coming back from the concussion, and they eased him back into the action. I think we'll see a little bit more from him in Game 5 when the series shifts to American Airlines Center. But didn't get Eberle, didn't get Bjorkstrand. Those guys had donuts, 0 shots. So the process, I think, was still right. The shot attempts were still there for them at 5-5, but didn't work out for us at all. I do believe heading back to Dallas that Eberle will be in play. Bjorkstrand will be up against the top line, and Dallas will be a little bit tougher for him. But I think Eberle will still be in play with more ice time from Jared McCann. And that line, Eberle in particular, really popped off in Dallas on the road. So the matchups were pretty good for him there. But we'll revisit that when we get to Game 5. As for tonight, the Leafs. Let's start with the Leafs here. We got the Panthers and the Leafs, 3-0 series lead here for Florida. -118 for Toronto on the money line, +105 for the Florida Panthers here at home. Can close out the Leafs. They've been playing, desperation playoff hockey for quite some time. There is something to be said about a team like that heading into the playoffs that have needed wins. They needed every single win that they got in the last month of the season. They almost missed the playoffs. They upset the Bruins, and now they have the Leafs up against it. If the Leafs are not going to win tonight, obviously they're out. The effort was absolutely pathetic from this squad in Game 3. Their big boys, where were they? I got to imagine they're showing up tonight. There's a lot I like in this game. I think we're going to see some offense, but I'm going with the Leafs. I'm taking the Leafs on the money line at -115. Again, if not now, when? Never. They got to find a way to win a hockey game tonight for these big boys to show up. So maybe I'll show it a little bit later on. I got a couple banners here in terms of picks for both games, but I am going to go with Austin Matthews over 4.5 shots. I am going to go with William Nylander over 3.5 shots. Both guys were very, very quiet, but William Nylander has been pretty good here. I know he hasn't scored, but he's been getting the shot attempts, and that's the biggest thing for me. If you're creating the shot attempts at 5-5, because he's on that second power play unit, which is not great for him. He's not on that first unit. Ryan O'Reilly's taking that spot from him. But if you're going to create shot attempts at 5-5, that says a lot for me, and he is the shooter on that second unit when they get out there. I'm going to go with those two guys, but I think the Leafs find a way to win here tonight. There's a couple players that I like that are slightly juiced at Brendan Montour at over 2.5 shots and Sam Bennett at over 2.5 shots. But the William Nylander play and the Austin Matthews play, those guys are at a decent price. I'll just kind of chuck it up now since I'm rolling through it. If you want to chuck up the Oilers and Golden Knights too, you can get after that one if you want. I got Montour and Marchessault over 2.5 shots. Let's start here with Brendan Montour. Brendan Montour has cleared 2.5 shots in every game in this series, 4 straight games, and 6 of his last 8. We've talked about him at length here throughout the playoffs. A nice breakout campaign for him in the regular season, and really just a volume shooter, taking away a lot of the shot attempts that we've seen in the past from Aaron Ekblad. It's been Montour on that top power play. He's jumping the rush. He's playing with a lot of just very aggressive style of hockey from Montour this season and into the playoffs. Paul Maurice has said it. I've heard him say it a couple times. He's allowing his defensemen to be aggressive, to jump up in the play. And he was a big difference in the Bruins series. And he's been a really good player for the Panthers in this series as well. As for Jonathan Marchessault, he finally broke out in the last game in this series with the Oilers, 2 goals and 6 shots. He has 17 shots on goal in the 3 games in this series. 17 shots in 3 games is significant. So that's a parlay that I like. Brendan Montour and Jonathan Marchessault over 2.5 shots. Sticking with this game, including Zach Hyman at over 2.5 shots. He has 8 shots on goal in his last 2 games. He's cleared 2.5 in 6 of his last 9. Just a little bit too juiced to take as a single. So putting these guys into a parlay. As for Ryan O'Reilly, he's had a really good playoff run. I mean, this is not on him. You know, he's not part of this 4 core here with Nylander and Marner and Matthews and Tavares. Ryan O'Reilly's been great. He's been a perfect pickup. It's exactly what the Leafs needed, clearly. I mean, it is not on him. He's been great defensively. He's got 9 points in the playoffs. He's contributed on the power play. He's played a great role. If I'm pointing the finger at anybody, it's Marner. It's Mitch Marner. Where are you? Need you to show up, right? Needs to be a presence. I know Nylander needs to score goals, and the puck luck hasn't gone his way. Tavares, the foot speed looks a little gone for him, but he has at least contributed. Matthews really took his game to another level, you know, at the end of the series in Tampa and early on in the series against the Panthers. Really bad game from everybody in game 3. But Ryan O'Reilly at over 1.5 shots, too juice to take as a single. But to pair him up with Hyman at plus 174, he has cleared 1.5 shots in 5 of his last 8 games. I kind of view him as Pavelski. I don't think he should be at 1.5. I know he didn't have any shots in the last game, but this is this is desperation tonight. The Leafs' effort was so brutal in game 3. I really do expect them to win, bring it tonight, and I expect them to win this evening. A couple other things that I like. I got Leon Draisaitl here for over 3.5 shots, was stuck on 3 in the last game, hit a couple posts, missed a couple nets. I think the process is true with Leon Draisaitl. Loves to shoot the puck. So over 3.5 for him. I got Evan Bouchard as well for an assist. He was held off the score sheet for the first time in the playoffs in the last game. He's got 14 points here in the playoffs, and 11 of those 14 have been apples at minus 128. So I like him, whether it's a power play assist. Most of them have been. That Oilers power play is operating at a crazy, crazy pace. But I do like Bouchard to pick up an assist. And then this is where I'm at here for kind of everything in terms of sides and totals. So Leafs money line minus 115. I think the Oilers bounce back as well. I don't think it's going to be the same sort of like what we saw in game 2 where they just exploded and they took it to Vegas. I think Vegas is going to be ready and prepared for that. But Aiden Hill did look good in the last game, but now you're down to like your third, fourth string goalie here. It's all about Jeff Skinner, right? Jeff Skinner has to bounce back himself. I think we're going to see goals in both games. So I got Toronto and Edmonton moneyline parlay plus 190. If you take just the 2 over 6.5, you can get plus 193 for both games. And then this is a crazy parlay at the end. Edmonton and Toronto in the over 6.5 in both games at plus 746. You can take this stuff as singles if you want. The Oilers are a touch of juice to take them on the money line. You can take Edmonton in the over, but Leafs money line, 1 bet, 1 single there for me. Toronto and Edmonton, 1 parlay there. Just the over on both, plus 193 for the over 6.5. And then this one here would be like maybe 0.25 units on it. Just a little bit of pizza money, a little bit of a sprinkle. Toronto and Edmonton and the overs on both at plus 746. But I'm looking for the big boys tonight to show up. We've seen it all playoffs. This second round has been, not only has it been very inconsistent from a betting standpoint for me, I think we did okay. We kind of broke even. We had some good things happen for us. We really needed Rupe Hintz with the 3 shots. Heischer was nice. Joe Pavelski was nice. Dadonov, those things were great. We did have Dallas. We had the over. But I'm looking for what we've seen in the second round has been blowouts. There haven't been a lot of competitive games. There's been one blowout. The other team comes back and blows them out as well. It's the only lopsided series has been this Florida one, but this Leafs team is better than this. I think they're going to show up tonight. I think Matthews scores a goal. Matthews 5 shots. William Nylander 4 shots. I would bank on William Nylander as well to find the back of the net. Ryan O'Reilly with the 1.5 shots into a parlay. I think Ryan O'Reilly for a point, Morgan Riley for an assist. These are things that have worked out for us well. On the Florida side of things, I really do like Carter Verhaeghe. I like Sam Bennett. Those guys are the volume shooters for the Florida Panthers, and Brendan Montour, of course, into the parlays. On the Edmonton side of things, I like Draisaitl. Of course, McDavid, put him into a parlay with whoever that you want, whether it's, Ryan O'Reilly or Brendan Montour in that first game or Sam Bennett. But Draisaitl would be my favorite guy to attack, and it's a decent price at minus 125, where McDavid is just too juiced at minus 160. The Bouchard assist, Zach Hyman shots into a parlay, and I really liked what I saw as we get out of here for Jonathan Marchessault and Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, Apple. He had 3 points, 2 assists. Jonathan Marchessault, as I mentioned, broke out with the 2 shots and the 2 goals and the 6 shots. I'd like Marchessault to have 3+ shots. I like him to hit the score sheet. That's one that we had that I don't think we brought up. Here it is here. Jonathan Marchessault for a point at minus 110. It's our free bet of the day over at ftmbets.com. You can put him into a parlay. As we mentioned, we brought this up, Montour and Marchessault, or for the Bet365 users, the same thing that we did yesterday with Joe Pavelski. We had Marchessault over 2.5 shots and a point at plus 160 over at Bet365. Yesterday, we did it at plus 120. It was Pavelski for a point and over 1.5 shots. I think the same thing applies here. Really like the attempts that he got in that game 3 in Edmonton. And I really like the way Eichel played there as well. Hello, Albert in the house. Need a good NHL parlay. Just gave you a couple. I would go with the props. We do have to got to keep the balance of the show. Let me show you one time. This would be the parlay. This is probably my favorite one. Let's see. I got a lot of banners on the go, don't I, Quan? This is probably my favorite one. Montour and Marchessault, followed by Hyman and Ryan O'Reilly. And then you could take Draisaitl as a single. You could do McDavid and Bennett too. That's the way I like it. Leafs in the over. Edmonton in the over. Leafs survive another day. Quick break. We're going to say goodbye to the hockey talk for now. We're going to talk a little NFL here next on Main Streets. Keep her locked.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking dynasty to the next level. future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking dynasty to the next level.
I was just putting together a same game parlay at Bet365 for the Leafs and Panthers game. I'll share it with you guys a little bit later on, but it's going to be something that we talked about. I think it was last week, Juan, when we showed those parlay hits. It's going to be the Leafs shooters and Sergei Bobrovsky saves. And we just hope that the goaltending, because the strategy is, ever since I talked about the strategy, goalies have been getting pulled. It hasn't worked out for us. But when you hit 11-1 or 33-1 or 125-1, like we've done so far in these playoffs, we're at least rolling on the positive side of things, so we can take some shots in some other same game parlays here. So we'll do that a little bit later on in the show, in the program. Let's take a look at Underdog ADP, top 12 quarterbacks. I did a couple drafts again last night. The puppy, it's $5 to enter. As I mentioned, we have the Underdog Best Ball Guide live over at ftnfantasy.com. We have rankings, we have articles, stacks to attack, values, strategy. It's all there for you. Absolutely everything that you can imagine, it is there for you. And I've just been doing these drafts. For one, I want to show you guys, I want to keep tabs on everything. I want to keep tabs on ADP movement, risers and fallers. I want, especially rookies, as we got Anthony Richardson highlighted there at pick 85.1 on average, the 10th quarterback off the board. I'm going to show you my rankings in the next block and how they compare here. But this is a bit of a look and a feel of where these quarterbacks are going in the order that they're going in. And I don't think we'll see too much change in this order. I think we could see maybe Trevor Lawrence's number kind of creep up a little bit higher. I know that I took him yesterday in a best ball around pick 55. So I reached a little bit. I had Calvin Ridley there and Evan Ingram with the Jag stack. I've been talking a lot about the Jag stack. I'm a big believer in what's going on here in Jacksonville. But this is the order. So you see the cluster at the quarterback position up at the top. These guys are getting picked in the second round. Josh Allen, 18.4. Patrick Mahomes, 18.7. Jalen Hurts at 18.9. It was Hurts that finished as quarterback one in terms of fantasy points per game last season. Of course, he missed a couple games towards the end of the season. I believe Mahomes finished overall as quarterback one, but Josh Allen did have more fantasy points per game than Patrick Mahomes. I may have that order wrong, but I know in fact that it was Hurts, quarterback one in terms of fantasy points per game, but it was all very, very close. I'll confirm in the next block. Lamar Jackson as quarterback four. He's the guy that I've seen creep up just a little bit. His ADP was roughly around Justin Fields at 35, but Lamar Jackson, what he can bring to the table is the same that Jalen Hurts can bring to the table and Josh Allen and really Justin Fields in terms of rushing ability. This is a guy that could have 700 plus rushing yards, like the weapons this season for Lamar Jackson. He's surrounded around, this is the best cast he's ever had. We know Mark Andrews is great. Odell Beckham Jr., bringing in him, drafting Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. I'll be honest, there's some question marks, with Odell Beckham Jr. We haven't seen him in quite some time, but he did look good towards the end of the Rams run there. And really, in the first half of the Super Bowl, it looked like peak Odell Beckham Jr., but that's when he suffered the injury. And then we didn't see him at all last year. But adding him, Rashad Bateman, who hasn't had a full season in 2 years, but when he's on the field does look like a really good weapon there for Lamar Jackson. I think that, I'm actually fine with taking those top six quarterbacks. I'm actually fine with a lot of those quarterbacks. You get your stack. You can get Jalen Hurts, and if you get Kelsey, you can do Kelsey Mahomes right away, and then you can take, a number of different Kansas City wide receivers. Thank you for this. You can do, AJ would have to be an late first, early second, and then you go Hurts, and you probably miss out on Devontae, but it's possible. You can get Goddard, but I'm fine with all of these quarterbacks. I am actually fine with. I don't think you need a third quarterback. I'll say that if you end up with Hurts and Mahomes and Allen or Jackson and Fields, even Burrow, I think those. You could have like another second quarterback, like you have a stud quarterback and you can just be fine with two. And I think if you don't have one of those first 5 or 6, then you may need 3 quarterbacks, whether it's taking a shot a little bit later on on, I don't know, a Jordan Love, a Bryce Young, a Matthew Stafford, a Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, something like that. I really like Geno Smith. We'll give him some love in the next block. But these guys, Joe Burrow actually finished ahead of Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson in terms of fantasy points per game. But he's, to me, a good value here as the sixth quarterback off the board, just outside pick 40. I think Justin Herbert outside pick 45 is solid. I really like the value here for Trevor Lawrence. I probably won't pull the trigger too much on Deshaun Watson at pick 80. I think we'll see a more of a pass-happy offense with Cleveland. I do like the weapons. He didn't look that good, but he hadn't played a lot of football in a 2-year span. So I think we'll see a little bit better throws from him, better fantasy games from him here in year 2 with Cleveland, and bringing in Tillman and Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. They got some nice pieces there. David Njoku, solid. Anthony Richardson, you guys in? Is this too steep? Pick 85.1. Let's keep an eye on this. I think we'll check in a couple weeks, maybe in a month's time, and I think we'll see him rise a little bit higher. I think it's a little bit too steep for me. I don't know if he's actually going to be a week 1 starter. I wouldn't be shocked if he was, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he's just behind Gardner Minshew, who knows the offense with Steichen. I'd say I'd give him over 14 games. If you give him over 14 games, he definitely has the upside to finish as a top 10 quarterback, giving his rushing upside. There were some pretty brutal moments from Justin Fields throwing the football, but he ran the ball, and he ran the ball really, really well. And he finishes, as at the end of the day, he finishes as a QB1. Dak and Tua, I think there's a little bit of risk there in Tua. A couple other quarterbacks going outside there that I have written down just because I'm going to keep tabs on all this for you guys. We'll do some drafts on the show, like I said. Kirk Cousins is just after this, followed by Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray, followed by Derek Carr, rounds out the top 20 quarterbacks there. Let's take a quick break, and I'm going to show you my top 12 quarterbacks. And there's one guy that's not on that list that's going outside the top 15 at the quarterback position that finished as a top 6 quarterback in fantasy. We'll talk about him next. Any guesses? Let's hear him. Keep her locked. We'll be back in a couple. Welcome back in. So just to recap, it was Jalen Hurts, number 1 in terms of fantasy points per game at the quarterback position, followed by Josh Allen, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson. I think, Fields is in for a big season. I really do believe with this comment. I think he is. Now he has some weapons. Another year with Eberflus and company. I mean, the rushing upside is completely there. So I understand we're just kind of splitting hairs a little bit, ahead of Burrow and Herbert, but I mean, it's right there. I mean, this guy finished with 19.7 fantasy points per game, ahead of Lamar Jackson. He's just behind Joe Burrow. I think he belongs kind of in that tier. It's that rushing floor. You may not believe in him as a passer, but the rushing floor is there. Quan, do you want to chuck up my rankings and I'll walk through this as well? Last year, we did see Patrick Mahomes did finish his quarterback one, Josh Allen behind him. Josh Allen played the 16 games. Mahomes played 17. Jalen Hurts played 15. But it was Hurts who, even though he finished his quarterback 3, it was Jalen Hurts who had 25.2 fantasy points per game, which was number 1. These are my rankings. I got Hurts 1. I know it's a tougher schedule, but I believe in everything that Philly is selling. There's a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator too. We could see some adjustments. The schedule is definitely going to be tougher, but it's a good offensive line. You got the 2 alpha wide receivers there in Smith and AJ and Dallas Goedert. You add a little bit too with a pass catcher in DeAndre Swift. So a little bit more explosive as a pass catcher than Miles Sanders. But we're splitting hairs. We just saw it in the last block. All these guys are going as pick 18, right? I'm fine with all of them. Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, you can make a case for any of these guys. That's a tier in itself. I really believe that. That's tier 1. Tier 2 for me would be Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Justin Fields. Fields is in that tier for me. Again, you bring in DJ Moore. You got some weapons. You got 3 running backs now on the roster. The offensive line, they've did some good things. So I do have Justin Fields ranked aggressively. And I think Joe Burrow is a really good value. As I mentioned in the last block, I think he's going a little bit later. He's going later than Lamar. He's going later than Fields. And Joe Burrow finished his quarterback 4, as I mentioned, in terms of fantasy points per game at 21.9, just 3 points fewer than that first tier. But right there, just ahead of Fields, just ahead of Lamar Jackson, pass happy offense. I mean, he's a stud, right? What can you say? Herbert, followed by Trevor Lawrence, followed by Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith. Watson and Jones. Yeah, Jones at the end of the day just always seems to be there. He finishes in terms of fantasy points per game as quarterback 10, added some weapons in the draft, brought in Paris Campbell, brought in Darren Waller, a year 2 here with Brian Daboll, who did wonders for Daniel Jones. He's coming off a career year. Like, guys, could we ever imagine Daniel Jones throwing 5 interceptions? Like, just 5 picks. This guy was a turnover machine. He had 7 rushing touchdowns. He had over 700 rushing yards. He's sneaky on the ground. It just seems to be there. At the end of the day, whether you believe in him as a passer, it kind of feels like Fields. I think Fields has a higher ceiling, but he just seems to be there because of his rushing upside. Our guy Quan got booted, so we're just going to continue to roll here on Mean Streets. That's okay. I do want to roll through something here in a second. But in terms of fantasy points per game, as I mentioned, Daniel Jones at number 10. And overall, this guy finishes as quarterback 9. Trevor Lawrence finished as quarterback 7 last year. A guy that's not on this list that finishes a top 10 quarterback is Kirk Cousins. A guy that's on this list for me is Geno Smith, as you see there. That may seem a little odd to some people. He's going as quarterback 16 in underdog drafts. I think he's a complete steal. I love the stack. I really do. You can get DK Metcalf, you can get Jackson Smith-Njigba, you can get Tyler Lockett, you get Noah Fant a little bit later on. Geno Smith, these are his numbers from last season. Led the NFL in completion percentage at 69.8%, just shy of 600 pass attempts. Look at the sneakiness on the ground. 366 rushing yards. He finished his quarterback 5 last year in fantasy. So even if you think he can't do it again, he could still finish as a top 10 quarterback. I got him ranked as quarterback 12. You see, points per game, quarterback 9. He's a low-end quarterback 1, and that you're getting outside the top 15. Going to bring you a little bit of a rushing floor. The defense has improved. I thought that their draft was fantastic. I thought they had a really good draft this past year. I thought that, they draft the best corner in the NFL, I thought, or in the draft rather. And I thought that some of their offseason moves, I think their defense is better. I just think that I also think that Seattle can compete for the division. I really do think that they're going to hang around with the 49ers. I would not be shocked if they do. They had a 5.5 win total last season, and they managed to surpass that with flying colors. There was really no issues at all for the Seattle Seahawks. They made the playoffs. I mean, this is a team that made the playoffs. This is a very, very surprising feat. But last year, finishing as quarterback 5, really waiting for my guy Quan to get on here so we can do another commercial break. And I'll throw to commercial here in a second. But that's the guy that I like, that I think is pretty good value as quarterback 5 last year in fantasy, and fantasy points per game, quarterback 9, ADP 109, quarterback 16. It's an easy stack to get done. Geno Smith right there for you. We're going to break. We'll be back here in a couple. Hang tight. All right, welcome back in. We're in just like that. Okay, we were having some technical difficulties. We're powering through here. I see Garth in the house. I don't know if he's asking any questions, but he's just leaving periods for us. I love it. Welcome in, Garth. We do appreciate you. I am going to go here with my baseball pick. We're going to talk a little bit about some late night action. We do have a matchup here between the Braves and the Red Sox. We don't have any boards for it. We were just waiting to see who the pitcher was going to be for Atlanta. They're rolling out Jared Schuster for the Braves up against Brian Bayo of the Red Sox. And we have a high total here just using our parlay calculator and our prop shop. And I know we've been talking a lot about the Boston Red Sox, and they've been playing really good baseball lately. They've been scoring some runs. They have a top 5 offense. I really do believe in that. We know that the Braves have a top 5 offense as well. This total is 10, so it's a little bit tough to get behind. But I do like this Atlanta Braves team total at over 5.5 runs at plus 110. Use our prop shop. You can get the best possible odds. I really like Bayo as a player, as a pitcher. I think he does have some good swing and miss stuff, but he does struggle with walks in command. So that is I'm always in on this Braves team. You know, offensively, they're a team that can certainly, go to toe with anybody in the league. This is a couple of years removed from winning the World Series, but this is a one that I wanted to really bring to your attention because I think we could see some offense. And I was looking for some walk props for Bayo, but they're a little bit juiced here. But I would go with over at DraftKings. You can see game totals, game props. You can see team totals here. And you can get the Atlanta Braves, and this game is starting at 7:20 Eastern. So you're watching on Game Plus. You still have some time to kind of jump in. Plus 110 over at DraftKings for the Atlanta Braves at over 5.5 runs. And if the 5.5 is too much, I think you can go to the other side as well at 4.5 for Atlanta. You don't have to take the 10.5, maybe the 10.5. I mean, that's a high number for a baseball game, 10.5. You can just take either side with the singles. 4.5 for the Red Sox at minus 105. So, I mean, Vegas is thinking that we're going to see 11 runs. The Braves have the highest team implied total in the late slate here of 5.7, and the Boston Red Sox have 4.6, which is up there as well. It's the 4th highest total on the late slate. We have the Mets at 6:40 Eastern up against the Reds and Hunter Green, a high total at 5.1. So A lot of runs I think we'll see between the Braves and the Red Sox. You guys are back. We'll do bats and one quick break. We'll be back in a couple. Hang tight.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking dynasty to the next level.
Welcome back in. Quickly, some NBA talk here. I think we'll see the Knicks win this game. 3.5 is the spread. I'm going to take them on just straight up on the money line at home. And I do like Jalen Brunson, man. Brunson's been really good. He's been fantastic. I mean, he had a coming out party last year for the Mavs in the first round of the playoffs without Luka Doncic. Over 25.5 points at -104. That's over at FanDuel for Jalen Brunson. So I think the Knicks will extend this series. I don't like them to win it. This Heat team is very underrated, man. Defensively, they bring it. Talking to Quan about Jimmy Butler and Spoelstra is a really good head coach. And I think we'll see the Warriors as well. They're 7.5-point favorites. I am not jumping on the 7.5. I'm going to jump on the Lakers. Guys, the Lakers have been good. I think that they could win it all. They're that good. They're that deep. The bench is good. Dennis Schroeder, for me, he's only cleared 8.5 points in, actually, he's done it in 3 of 4. But if you look overall at the playoffs, like, not great. He only did it once in the 6 games against the Memphis Grizzlies, but 10 points, 12, 4, and 19 in his last 4 games. He's had at least 9 shot attempts in 3 of the 4 games, played 35 minutes in the last game, 31 minutes in game 1. So Schroeder for 8.5 points, slightly juiced at -125, and the Lakers to cover, but the Warriors to win. Enjoy your Wednesday. Appreciate you guys hanging tight with all the technical difficulties. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.